I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. Do you live in America? Those of us who live in America have been taught, have been encouraged, have been influenced in our entire life to believe that we could embrace, become part of the American dream. Well, Michael Snyder, writing in prophecynewswatch.com, points to the end of the American dream. He says what we're witnessing all over the country right now is incredibly sad. In the aftermath of the tragic death of George Floyd, it would have been wonderful to see the entire nation unite behind an effort to make our society less violent, more just, and more peaceful. But instead, we've seen a tremendous explosion of violence, lawlessness that doesn't seem likely to end anytime soon. Violent crime rates are surging in major city after major city, and the 4th of July weekend was particularly bad. At least 41 people were hit by gunfire in New York City during that holiday weekend. And this continues a trend that we've seen throughout the first half of 2020. According to the figures released by the New York Police Department for the first 6 months of this year, there were 176 murders. That's an increase of 23% over last year. The number of shooting victims has gone up 51% to 616 this year so far. In June alone, there were 250 shootings compared with 97 in the same month last year. Month-on-month burglaries are up 119%, car thefts 48%. And it's in this environment that people want police budgets reduced and police officers let go. Now, this is only happening in major liberal cities or states. It's not happening across the country. A tremendous amount of money has been shifted away from the NYPD budget with the idea that this will help matters. For years, the hard work of the police had helped to make New York safer than many other major cities. But now that's changing, and it's changing at a pace that's breathtaking. In fact, one British news source is now referring to the city as Lawless New York. 2 bullet-ridden bodies lay sprawled on blood-stained concrete steps. Alongside, relatives of the victims are wailing and collapsing on the ground. In another part of the city, a gang of youths use spray paint to disable security cameras before robbing a corner store. Later, video footage captures police officers sitting helplessly in their patrol car as a baying crowd hurls glass bottles at them. This is lawless New York, a city that was once America's glittering crown jewel, but which risks descending into mob rule. Now, the reality is that New York still has a long way to go if it wants to rival Chicago. According to authorities, there are more than 100,000 gang members living in Chicago today, and the violence never seems to stop. Over the 4th of July weekend, at least 67 people were hit by gunfire in Chicago. At least 67 people were shot, including 13 fatalities over the Independence Day weekend, according to authorities. 9 of the weekend's victims were minors, and 2 children died. That includes a 14-year-old boy who was among 4 people killed in the South Side neighborhood of Englewood Saturday night. But instead of blaming the criminals, the Chicago Sun-Times seems to think that cutting funding for police could lead to a better and safer Chicago. Seriously? Do people actually believe such nonsense? Yeah. Philadelphia is another major city that's seeing a massive increase in violent crime. Shootings are up 67%. Victims of armed violence up 29%. Homicides up 25%. So, of course, it makes sense to defund Philadelphia police by $19 million, right? That's what they want to do. Most Americans desperately want their neighborhoods to feel safe. And that could be one issue that could rescue the Republicans from a potential disaster in November. Right now, most Democrats are extremely hesitant to speak out against the violent protests that we've been witnessing all over the nation. And that's a mistake. We definitely witnessed more alarming violence during the political protests that were held over the past few days. For example, protesters in Portland, Oregon were launching projectiles and shooting fireworks at police officers in Portland for hours. Can Democrats win over independent voters if they're seen as siding with that kind of violence? By engaging in such utter lawlessness, these radical protesters are actually hurting their own cause. The more violence we see, the more American people are going to want it to stop. And they're not going to believe Joe Biden can do that. So Joe Biden's unwillingness to strongly call for law and order may turn out to be his Achilles heel. The way national elections are won in America is by winning over the millions of confused people in the middle. And right now, the images of these protests that these confused people are viewing on their television screens are definitely not helping Democrats. For example, over the weekend, protesters in New York were burning American flags as they chanted, "America was never great." Far-left protesters have burned American flags outside the Trump Tower and outside the White House. Video shows the stars and stripes being burned just outside the White House as demonstrators chant, "America was never great." Does anybody think that these kinds of stunts are going to make confused people in the middle more likely to vote Democrat? Right now, Trump is behind in the polls, but if this continues and he makes it his central campaign issue over the next several months, he still has a chance. But no matter who wins in November, it appears that we now have entered a new era of violence and rioting. The question becomes why? I believe it's largely due to our education system. No, not our schools, our classrooms, although they may contribute, but the way we educate citizens. We do it via internet, YouTube, Facebook, a host of social apps, television, cable news. Many of our major cities already resemble war zones. What we have experienced so far may just be the beginning. I agree wholeheartedly. I just trust that it does not come to a city near you.